When Hagerman asked, "Must all men employed be Union men?" Calderwood responded with, "Yes, if there are enough to go around." The United States during the late 19th century, a period known for imperial expansion, industrial growth, and the rise of the labor movement. The 1894 Western Federation of Miners, WFM, strike in Cripple Creek, Colorado, established two of the most important and lasting historical frontiers in the fight for workers' rights in the American West. The unionization of thousands of new workers in Cripple Creek, Colorado, and across the Rocky Mountain West established organized labor for the first time in many parts of the U.S., and one of the first times that the U.S. government advocated for and endorsed a labor union rather than a corporation or business. The frontiers set by the Cripple Creek strike helped lay the framework for President Roosevelt's New Deal's support of unions and the modern-day unionization of workers across Colorado and the United States.
Colorado's initial American settlement began in 1858 when gold was discovered near the South Platte River, sparking the area's first gold rush. Later in 1891, gold was once again discovered, this time in the Pikes Peak area. This discovery led to rapid settlement there. After only 3 years, more than 150 mines were operating. During the 1890s, the most prominent town in the area was known as Cripple Creek. Seeking fast fortunes for hard labor, men across the country raced to the west to find employment in rapidly developing mining towns. They faced abysmal conditions and were subjected to back-breaking work that required intense physical labor within dark and cramped spaces. Harrowing conditions like these created an intense demand for an organization to protect their rights. In 1893, miners from Idaho, Colorado, Utah, and Montana met in Butte, Montana to form a union, the Western Federation of Miners. By the late 19th century, labor movements in the eastern U.S. had gained immense traction, boasting powerful national organizations such as the American Federation of Labor. Despite this, the labor movement in the western U.S. was sporadic and lacked any kind of powerful national organization like the East had. The creation of the WFM changed this dramatically, creating a frontier in history. In 1893, an economic panic shook the United States. It prompted mine owners in Cripple Creek area to demand more hours for lower pay from their miners. In January of 1894, mine owners J.J. Hagerman, David Moffett, and Aben Smith, who altogether employed 1/3 of the area's miners, announced the workday to be raised from 8 to 10 hours with no change in their pay of $3 a day. Cripple Creek's miners were outraged and were represented by the newly created WFM. During that month, there was a work stoppage by the miners against the mine owners. There were attempts to create a compromise, but by February, the mine owners were unwilling to concede a 10-hour workday. On February 7, 1894, the strike began. The miners in Cripple Creek struck en masse. They closed mines and set up picket lines. Miners who continued to work contributed 10% of their wages to those striking. By late spring, the mine owners were desperate to end the strike. In order to gain leverage, mine owners hired a local sheriff, M.F. Bowers, to deputize a paramilitary force. With the strike being threatened by this, the WFM president John Calderwood took action of his own, having the strikers organize militarily upon Bull Hill Bluff. To counter this, 125 deputies sent by Bowers constructed a camp adjacent to the strikers on Bull Hill. Several strikers placed dynamite in a house nearby the deputies' camp. The explosion that followed terrified the deputies, causing them to flee their camp. The embroilment left the owners outraged. They once again turned to Bowers, this time demanding a force of 1,200 men, mostly ex-police officers and firefighters, to keep the strikers in check. As the tensions escalated, one of the most important unknown figures in Western history, Colorado Governor Davis Wade, intervened. Wade was a populist politician, lawyer, and abolitionist who came to Colorado in 1879. He practiced law in Aspen, helping miners settle disputes against mining companies. Wade came to understand and empathize for the plights of Colorado miners. He was elected governor of Colorado in 1892, and he made protecting the rights of the general public and workers his primary goal. Wade declared Sheriff Bowers' force of 1,200 deputies to be illegal, intervening on the side of the miners, an act uncommon for the time. In the late 19th century, as a principle of tradition, politicians sided with corporations rather than unions. Presidents such as Benjamin Harrison and Rutherford B. Hayes intervened on the side of major corporations. Waite broke tradition by siding with the strikers, creating a frontier in history. On June 2nd, Governor Waite, Calderwood, and the owners met in Denver for negotiations. The parties agreed to resume the $3 per day wage and the 8-hour workday, as well as a peace between the miners and the owners, a decisive victory for the miners and the WFM. Despite this diplomatic agreement, the strike's events had not yet been concluded. 1,200 deputies still occupied the Cripple Creek area, and they knew nothing of the agreement as they had cut all telegraph wires. On June 5th, the deputies moved to confront the miners still camped on Bull Hill. Hearing the chaos, Waite sent the Colorado State Militia to Cripple Creek to control the rogue force. Once the militia had arrived, the deputies attempted to make a final charge towards the miners on Bull Hill. The militia under General Brooks intercepted the deputies, halting their attack. After meeting with the miners, the militia was able to subdue and arrest many of the deputies. The initial agreement finally went into effect, allowing the miners to return to work, ending the strike in June of 1894.
The conclusion of the Cripple Creek strike marked the creation of yet another powerful frontier in history, the success of the labor movement in the Rocky Mountain West. The WFM garnered great support among the workers of Cripple Creek and organized the majority of them into 54 local unions. They also expanded their influence across the western United States. The Topeka State Journal, May 1895, highlighted their expansion. The coal miners' unions, representing thousands of men in several western and northwestern states, were admitted to membership in the Federation. Organized labor had hardly existed in many parts of the western U.S. during the time, but the success of the strike allowed it to grow, creating a massive frontier in western labor history. Despite this early success, employers and the general public of Colorado blamed the WFM and Governor Waite for the violence of the strike. Waite went on to lose the 1894 elections. Without the support of Waite, the WFM became involved in a new conflict, the Colorado Labor Wars of 1903 to 04, which involved miners and workers under the WFM striking against mines and mills across Colorado. In the end, the corporations won out, and the WFM was dealt a critical blow. The union was left extremely disorganized and lacking in funds. After this period, the WFM would stagnate immensely, never again reaching the same influence it had maintained during the 1890s. A final loss of support from Butte, Montana, the union's birthplace, would cause it to merge with the United Steelworkers of America, bringing an official end to the Western Federation of Miners in 1967. Although the union collapsed, the frontiers set by the strike had a profound continuing legacy. The strike's achievement of an 8-hour workday for $3 pay helped regularize fair pay and work time for miners across the western U.S. into the 20th century. Despite the WFM's decline in influence, its introduction of organized labor to the West would last into the modern day. With federations of unions such as the American Federation of Labor and the Congress of Industrial Organizations continuing to support Western workers as of the present, a remaining impact of the frontier set by the strike. Governor Waite's support of the strikers and disregard for traditional corporate-government alliance was reflected in the 20th century. In the 1930s, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal promoted reforms that greatly benefited unions. FDR passed the Wagner Act in 1935, which kept employers from interfering with the affairs of labor unions, and founded the National Labor Relations Board, which assisted in union organization. FDR's support of the labor movement on a federal level strongly mirrors the frontier of government labor relations set by Davis Waite in the Cripple Creek strike. As historian John R. Morris says, Waite was a social pioneer of his time, a courageous fighter for the rights of the people against private interests, one of the best friends labor has ever had. The Cripple Creek strike of 1894 was one of the most thought-provoking frontiers in American labor history. In an area in which workers' rights were effectively non-existent, the Western Federation of Miners, with the aid of populist Governor Davis Waite, was able to enfranchise miners in Cripple Creek with fair conditions and fair pay. Governor Waite paved a frontier in his action of supporting the miners of Cripple Creek. The success of the strike would allow for rapid unionization of workers across the Rocky Mountain West for the first time ever, creating an important frontier. Workers today in the Rocky Mountain West still benefit from the frontier that was paved by the struggles of miners and the support of the Union. Nonetheless, mining persists to be one of the most physically demanding and dangerous jobs, and it's extremely important to remember the struggles that miners experience to this day.